So looking at today's class, we're going to talk about some guidance that came out from the FDA a few years ago, actually several years ago if you think about it, but it's final regulatory guidance in reporting safety information to IRBs. Now since that time, we've had draft guidance come out about how the FDA expects sponsors to report safety information to them, but this is specifically talking about how we get that information to IRBs. As we'll see, a lot of concern, both here in the U.S. and in the rest of the world, with how information is making its way to those IRBs and ethics committees, particularly as we've changed our relationship with IRBs, being maybe more a sponsor vendor as opposed to truly being an institutional review board where that investigator is conducting their studies. So we're going to look at some of the changing regulatory climate, which we've already talked about a little bit, the global response and recommendations for more meaningful safety reporting. So we have some information from SIOMS where they have helped support this move towards how we're going to be reporting to our ethics committees. We'll talk about the guidance, the FDA's guidance in 2009 and 2007. Both from the FDA and OHRP were really instrumental in getting this information moving. The Office of Human Research Protections is the agency within the Department of Health and Human Services where IRBs are required to register. So they took on that, but also they were getting a lot of feedback from IRBs in terms of the information that they were receiving and not able to make a determination as to whether or not there was a risk. So we'll look at some of the implications for current practices and examine case scenarios, what we're seeing now, what we saw when that first came out and how that's changed or not. We want to keep in mind that in clinical research, even though we're focusing right now on how we report information to that IRB, safety information is going to be everybody's responsibility. We are going to always be looking for safety, regardless of which phase research that we're doing. So because GCP is that system of overlapping responsibilities, mutual accountability and shared responsibility for making sure we get good data from protected subjects, and then ultimately what we're doing in clinical research is getting a product that we can get approved and getting it out there to the public. So we want to make sure that all that safety information is accurate. But because we have that redundancy and overlap in the regulations, it's everyone's responsibility. Even though we're talking primarily about safety reporting to that IRB, we know that the sponsor can't meet its obligations for reporting if the investigator is not doing their meeting their regulatory requirements for reporting that information as well. So we look to our sponsors to report information to the agency, to the IRBs, to the participating investigators, and we look for those investigators to report it to the sponsors and to the IRBs as necessary, because that's part of that IRB process capability we're looking for our investigators as well. And it circles back to those sponsors because their monitors are supposed to be making sure that that's being met. So compliance with safety management and reporting requirements allows us to contribute to the emerging safety profile of our investigational product. As we said, we're always going to be looking for safety. We collect safety information, adverse events, because we're looking at the safety profile of our product. We're looking at the safety profile of our study population. So making sure that they're safe, but also what happens when you take someone off their standard of care and put them on this investigational product. We have to keep an eye on that. It's an ethical issue as well. And we are also looking at the safety profile of our protocol. So do we need to maybe consider shutting down one arm of this protocol, or do we maybe need to consider tapering doses or increasing doses? So when we are gathering safety information, it is trying to look at all of those risks as a whole. We're looking at potential benefits and risks associated with that product or protocol, and then ultimately what we're hoping to do is to provide labeling information for our product. How do we gather safety information? We have to share, as sponsors, we have to share this information with those who are going to be working on our studies. Our protocol should be very clear in terms of the expectations for safety gathering. We should have templates that reflect the information that we need to gather. We should make sure that we are working with groups that understand what those requirements are. I'm an auditor, so unfortunately, we find these things sometimes built into the protocol where issues are incorrect or incomplete. We find templates where they've been sent out to sites to use, but they are not asking for information that's going to be required to report. We see protocols just recently, a protocol that had a definition of a serious adverse event that was updated in 2010 under 21 CFR 312.32. So we have to think about where we're starting. It's important that we gather this information, but we have to make sure that we give everyone the tools to do that correctly.